Good morning and welcome to Chapter 1, Introduction to Financial Statements. In this chapter, we have seen what the basic financial statements are that the end users of financial accounting are interested in. We will go over homework problem 1, in which I will show you how these financial statements are prepared. So to get started, I'm going to do a quick screen share. I'm now on Wiley Plus in our class. In Blackboard, I'm sorry, in our class. Before I get into Wiley Plus, I'm in the chapter folders. I've opened chapter 1. And if you scroll down, you will see the homework assignment. The homework assignment I will look at a little later on in terms of how it is laid out in Wiley Plus. Right now, I'm going to access the chapter itself. In the chapter, on the sidebar over here, I'm looking at end of chapter homework problems, the homework material that's there. You have numerous resources over here, practice assignments, brief exercises, etc. I'm going to go all the way down to the problems. When I get down over here to problems, problem set A, we have problem 1.1a, 1.2a, and 3a. 3a is the one that we need to work on. Now, the reason I'm looking at this problem and not on Wiley Plus is when each of you access your textbook the way I did, all of you are going to see the exact same problem with the exact same numbers. And this is what I'm going to use to show you how I do the problem in Excel. When you log into Wiley Plus to do your assignment, every student is going to have different numbers. So copying information from what I do or another student does is not going to help you because everyone's numbers are going to be different. It's more important you learn how to do the work. So this problem I have copied and pasted into an Excel spreadsheet, and I will show you how to do that. So let me do another screen share now with Excel. Okay, and I now have my Excel spreadsheet set up over here for you. So before I get started, let me just do something real quick over here. Okay, so the homework problem stated that on June 1st, 2022, Elite Service Company was started with an initial investment in the company of $22,100 cash. The assets, liabilities, common stock of the company at June 30th, 2022, and revenues and expenses for the month of June are as follows. They've given us the information. One additional piece of information they've given us is the company did not issue any more stock during this month, but they did pay out dividends. They've asked us to prepare 3 financial statements. They've given us check figures, and then there are 2 more questions at the end. So let me start with the information that's being given over here and show you the layout that I have. I've created the shell for these 3 financial statements. And something to note over here when you work in Wiley Plus, anytime you have any information that's given in red, I'm going to go over that at the very end. Please follow that very carefully. So in this case, there are 2 pieces of information that they have marked in red. I've brought that over here, and I'll tell you as we go along what it is. So financial statements are prepared at the end of the period, and they're basically a report card of the business, how they performed. Every report card, think of your own transcript. It always has to be identified with whose information it is. Your report card will have your first and last name, your student ID number. So over here, we need the name of the company. So this is an accounting rule. Every financial statement must have name of company. In this case, it's Elite Service Company. So always in the first line, I will have name of the company. What goes in the second line? In the second line, it's the statement. What is this? In this case, the first one is the income statement. Second one is statement of retained earnings. And third is the balance sheet. Now, the third line is important. It's going to be a little different for one of them. So the income statement always relates to a period. So during the period, June 1st through June 30th, what was the company's income statement? So it's always for a period ended. In this case, it's for the month ended June 30th, 2022. Same thing for statement of retained earnings. It's for the month ended June 30th, 2022. The balance sheet is a report card as of a particular date. So here we're just interested in, for example, your final GPA. I just need that cumulative number, and that's what the balance sheet is giving me over here. It's giving me the final numbers that I want in the company's accounts. So now with that, I have the three statements identified. Statement of retained earnings, they tell you put items that increase retained earning first and then the ones that decrease. I'll go over that in a minute. And assets have to be listed in the order of liquidity. I'll also go over that piece of information, what it means and how we do that. So now let's identify what goes into each of these statements. So in the income statement, I have revenues, and then I have my expenses. The difference between revenues and expenses is going to give me my net income number. So this is always the same format. You list your revenues first, you list all your expenses, and then the net income. I have two columns over here for the numbers, and it's nothing but an inside column and outside column. Inside column is going to have details, outside column is going to have just the summary numbers. Statement of retained earnings, always the same format. What did I start the period with? Retained earnings beginning balance, in this case, it's June 1st, 2020. Now, in this case, it's easy. This number is 0 because I have nothing retained from the prior period simply because there was no prior period. I started my business on June 1st. I will add net income. The net income from the income statement is going to come here. When I add these two numbers, I come up with what's called a subtotal. This is the monies that's going to be available for me to give out as dividends. That's a share in profit to the owners. If the board of directors chooses to, they don't have to. So if it is there, it's going to be less dividends, and then you're going to have retained earnings ending balance. So this is always a standard format. Retained earnings beginning balance, add net income, less dividends gives you retained earnings ending balance. This format is not going to change, so you could commit it to memory if you need to right now. In the balance sheet, we have assets, we have liabilities, and we have stockholders' equity. Stockholders' equity will always have two items. The first item is going to be common stock, and the second item is going to be the retained earnings ending balance that comes from over here. So you see these three statements are connected. Now there are different ways in which you can proceed in terms of preparing these financial statements. I'm going to show you how I'm doing it, and then I will explain how some other folks prefer doing it. So the way I prefer doing this is, now that I know what my statements look like, I go down the list, and each item, as I come across the item, I'll place it in one of these three statements. So which means I need to know what these items are, what these accounts are. The first account is cash. Cash is an economic resource that the business owns, so it's an asset. I need to place it under assets. Now what was I told over here? List assets in order of liquidity. The word liquidity means nearness to cash. So cash obviously is the first item that's there, and I'm going to list that first. So nearness to cash, really, what's the importance over there? Because people want to be paid, and the payment is always in cash. So how quickly, how easily can I convert an asset into cash? That's liquidity. So cash is listed here. As soon as I list cash over here, I'm going to highlight it to indicate that I've taken care of that number, so I don't put that down a second time. The next item is accounts receivable. This is monies that my customer owes me for credit service. So this 4,000 is the next item I'm going to list. It's an asset. This is money that's coming to me from my customers, hopefully very soon. I don't want surprises. The surprise I do not want is that they don't pay me. The next item is service revenue. That's a revenue item here, obviously. This is what I have earned by performing services. So I will list that over here. The next item is supplies. Supplies is an asset. Supplies, as an accountant, what kind of supplies would I use? I would use pens, paper, pencil, ink cartridge. I don't sell supplies, but I need it to conduct my business in order to perform the services or sell goods to my customers. So I'm going to use it in the business, but it's going to help me generate revenues indirectly. It's an asset. So it's going to be listed after accounts receivable. It's further removed from cash. Will it convert to cash? In the ordinary course of business, I don't expect to convert it into cash. I expect to use it up. But I guess if my business is going under, I'm going to start selling my supplies, but that's a bad sign. Let's carry on here. Advertising expense is an expense, so I'm going to take that number over here and bring it under expenses. Equipment is an asset. Again, this asset is going to be used by the business in order to help me generate revenues. Now, in this case, you're looking at Elite Service Company. They don't tell us what this company does. As an accountant, what kind of equipment would I have? Computers, printers, copiers, those are probably going to be the biggest equipment investment I'm going to have as an accountant. Again, equipment is not sold to the customer by a service company. It is used in the business to help me generate my revenues. So it's an asset, and you will see it's the last asset that I'm listing over here because it's further removed from cash. Then I have common stock. We know where common stock goes. So common stock will be listed over here. The amount is $22,100. And then I have notes payable and accounts payable. The word payable indicates their liabilities. I owe money to someone. Usually notes payable would be a larger amount, and these are monies I have borrowed, let's say from a bank. I need to pay that with interest. Accounts payable is typically monies I owe vendor. I started my accounting business. I have to pay my BG&E bill. I have to pay my Verizon bill. I typically have 30 days to make those payments, and these are recurring in nature. Typically, accounts payable, I don't have to pay interest on it as long as I pay it on time. Notes payable, even when I pay it on time, I have to pay interest. That's for a subsequent chapter, the discussion. So these two are liabilities. I'm going to put them under liabilities. Okay. And then I have supplies expense, maintenance and repairs expense, utilities expense, salaries expense. All of these are expenses, which means they will all come over here under this list of expenses. Okay, so I have put all the information that was given over here in these financial statements. What else is left? The last one is during the month of June, the company issued no additional common stock. So the common stock, what they said they invested, that's the same number I have here. But they did pay out $1,400 in dividends. And that number is going to come over here. Payment in dividends, $1,400. So at this point, I have taken care of all the information they have given me. So I'm now ready to finish up my financial statements, and I'll show you how I do that. And as I do that, I'll explain a couple other things. So revenues, I have only one item, and I'm going to write total revenues and put the number in the outside column. If I had more than one source of revenue, I'd identify each one of them in the inside column. So these are just inside columns and outside columns, nothing more to it. If you wanted, you could have put these numbers over here in the outside column and done a total over here, totally up to you how you lay it out. Advertising expense, supplies, maintenance, utilities, salaries, add up all the expenses, and we have $3,700 as our total expenses. Now, in what order should we list these expenses? There is no prescribed rule, and even Wiley Plus didn't give me any information. I put them in just in the order in which they were shown over here. I just brought them in over here. Most firms like to present their expenses in the order of magnitude in terms of size. So the largest expense would be listed first. Salaries and wages expense would be listed first. Supplies would be listed second, then maintenance, then advertising, then utilities, to give a sense of importance where I'm spending my money. But it is not necessary. You could list it alphabetically. Any random order doesn't matter. To make life easy, I just put them in the order in which I see them. So the difference between total revenues and total expenses is going to give me my net income. And thankfully, I have a positive number, which means revenues were more than my expenses. I have a net profit. The word net income is generic. Net income could be net profit or net loss. If it is a net loss, this number would have been in red ink. In the olden days when everything was being done manually, the accountant would write the number in red to indicate that this is alarming, you need to pay attention, it's a red flag over here, we need to look at it. When the company turned a profit, you put it in black. That's how the expression is, in the red, in the black, that you've come. And just to kind of tell you one more little bit of story over here in terms of how some terms come, the expression Black Friday that we have on Thanksgiving, in the day after Thanksgiving, that's when most retailers turn a profit. Until then, they're in the red. On Black Friday, if this number doesn't turn to black, they're in trouble. That's the day they have to show a profit. That's how that expression comes about. Obviously, here with Excel, you can have anything set up anywhere, any way you want to. But I just want to point out to you, revenues minus expenses is going to give you net income. If it's a positive number, it's a net profit. If it's a negative number, it's a loss. So this number I'm going to highlight in a different color. And the reason I'm doing that is to tell you that that number carries over here. These two statements are linked. Beginning retained earnings, which is 0 in this case, plus 3,800 gives me a total of 3,800. I now have this much money available to share with the owners. In this case, the company has decided to give out 1,400, which means what they have retained in the business, that's how the name retained earnings. They have kept the earnings in the business as 2,400. Now let's move down over here. Assets. Assets were listed in the order of liquidity. Most liquid first, least liquid at the end. Your total assets here are now 3,700. Your liabilities added up to 12,500. Now the ending retained earnings number, again, let me put it in a different color so we see it, is going to come down over here. I carry that number over down over here. This is going to give me total equity of 24,500. So the owners put in 22,100. They now have 22,500 in the business. That's how much they have in the business. It was a little more, but since they took out 1,400, this is their balance. You add up liability and stockholders' equity. Now, this is very important. The last check figure that we're going to have over here. Total assets must equal total liability and stockholders' equity. If these two numbers don't add up, our balance sheet is not in balance. We made a mistake somewhere. We need to go back and check. And as you can see, if I made a mistake over here, let's say even one number was a mistake over here. I put, instead of 300, I put 30. All your numbers are going to be off. Let me go ahead and do that and see what happens. If I make this 30, this changes, all these numbers change, and you're going to see your total assets do not equal total liabilities and stockholders' equity. Obviously, let me switch that around so that we get this. So that brings me to another point real quickly. If you see how I did this work in Excel, I did not retype everything. I did a lot of cell referencing. So for instance, even the word service revenue, I didn't type service revenue. I looked at the cell where it was. I made the reference, A9. Also for the numbers, it minimizes chances of me making mistakes, which is why I love Excel, and I will be using this extensively during the semester as we go along. So even for adding up numbers, I use a formula. I don't type the number. As far as possible, I avoid typing anything in Excel because there's a lot of room for error. And also, the problem that I brought over, I copied and pasted the problem from the textbook into Excel. So again, I know I didn't make any mistakes over there. Now, before I pat myself on the back over here, let's just double check. Wherever they give you check figures, always check this. Net income, they said, is 3,800. I got that number. Retained earnings, ending balance obviously is 2,400. I have that number. And total assets, which will be total liability and stockholders' equity, is 37,000. I have that number as well. So at this point, I know that I have done everything correctly over here with my 3 financial statements. Let's look at the last 2 questions over here. Briefly discuss whether the company's first month of operations was a success. Most new businesses are not going to show a profit. This company showed a profit in their very first month. So amen to that. They're very successful. Hopefully it continues. That trend should continue. Next question they're asking you is to discuss the company's decision to distribute a dividend. Most companies, again, do not distribute dividends initially because they don't show profit. This company did just have a profit, so good for them. Also remember, stockholders are a little nervous. If I was the investor and gave 22,100, and the very first month you turn around and give me $1,400 and tell me my investment has gone up, I'm going to be very happy with you. So if you want more money from me for more investment, I'm more likely to give it to you. So it builds stockholder confidence if dividends are paid out. But that's the larger question is, what are the future plans of the company? All of those things. We will address those issues in subsequent chapters. So with this, I'd like to again switch gear and see if I can show you my Wiley Plus. Let me see if I can get to that. Let me get to this. I'm going back to my Blackboard account. I'll go to Wiley Plus. When I click on this, things are going to look a little different for me because I'm in the faculty view, not the student view. Let me just finish this up quickly here. When I go to the problem, you'll see it's the same problem, but numbers are all different. So each of you is going to see different numbers. Here you will see that as you work through the problem, these are obviously showing you the answers already. If the number, once you submit your work, you will see it in green if it is correct. It'll be in red if it is incorrect. You have 5 attempts to do each homework problem. Each homework problem that you do, each attempt that you do, the numbers will stay the same. They won't change. But every single student gets a different set of numbers, so don't just copy from someone else. Ask questions. Again, as I told you, if you see anything in red, you need to be careful, because if you do not follow those instructions, Wiley Plus will mark it wrong. For instance, if you wrote dividends first, you wrote less dividends, and then add net income, it'll mark all of this wrong. Over here it says less assets, not of liquidity, therefore make sure you do that. For expenses, it didn't tell you in what order to list them, so any order is fine. Another thing I'd like to point out is I have enabled all the resources for a homework assignment, which means while you're doing a homework, you can get linked to textbook. The link to textbook will take you to the relevant section for you to read if you don't understand something. Link to video is just as I did everything in Excel, you have the author of the book telling you how to do the homework assignment in Wiley. You can look that up as well. So there's lots of resources available. In some cases, you will see link to similar exercise or similar problem. Make use of all of these resources. Look at the videos that I post and ask questions as you go along. Okay, so get these assignments done. The first set of assignments are due on September 9th. Good luck.